This is Basket Case Clubs, CPR Group's podcast where we turn basket case clubs into showcase clubs. G'day everyone and welcome to another edition of Basket Case Clubs. Today I am both pilot and first officer. I'm flying solo today because Steve and his wife have just given birth to the most beautiful baby girl, so I'm very happy to have a beautiful new niece. And Steve, we look forward to seeing your smiling face back here very soon with that beautiful I'm a new proud dad look on your face. Congratulations. Today I've got something really special to share with you. It's an interview with Richard Tanner, who is the president of Wellers Hill Bowls Club. Now, we talk about basket case clubs, obviously, on this podcast, but this one really is more showcase than basket case. While so many other bowls clubs are going out of business and not being able to function anymore because of the changing demographics and the changing needs of the world around them, Wellers Hill is an amazing story because they have discovered, and more important than discovering, they have implemented a massive amount of really simple steps that any club, not just a bowls club, can take, can learn from, and can implement themselves. It is just a great success story, and Richard tells about how he has had experiences on other clubs, but in going through a dedicated process of really exploring opportunities for Wellers Hill, he's been able to come up with new ideas. Him and the committee have been able to come up with new ideas and make massive changes in just a short amount of time, probably more so in the last 12 months than he has been able to in the last 40 years as a volunteer. Some of the things that I really took away from this that I thought were most important, we'll go through them towards the end of the interview, but if you've got problems with neighbours, just bury the hatchet and get on. You know, it's about looking into the future. There are so many ideas in here. The use of social media, the use of creating real connections in your community. There are some wonderful suggestions from Richard and from the rest of the committee that Chris Kenward, who is from CPR Group, has shared with them. So rather than me tell you any more about this fantastic club and the wonderful things that they've achieved, I will hand over to Chris Kenward from CPR Group and Richard Tanner, the president of Wellers Hill Bowls Club. Joining me now are Richard Tanner and Chris Kenward. Richard is from Wellers Hill Bowls Club. G'day, Richard. How are you?
Hello, Michael. Pleased to see you.
Pleased to see you too. And Chris Kenward, good morning to you as well.
Good to you, Michael. You're looking good.
Oh, thank you. I do try. So, Richard, for our listeners who don't know where Wellers Hill Bowls Club may be, can you give us a little intro as to where you guys are?
Yes, Michael. Well, I didn't even know where Wellers Hill Bowls Club was to start with until I stumbled on it. It is an old suburb of inner Brisbane on the south side, and it is virtually in the suburb of Tarragindi. And this club was built in 1962, and then it's still known as Wellers Hill, but as I say, because of the expansion of the Tarragindi suburb, it's virtually taken over the Wellers Hill suburb.
Excellent. And Chris is one of our fantastic CPR Group team members. Chris, how did you happen to stumble across Richard and the Wellers Hill Bowls Club?
Through a program that council have put in place, asking us to work with clubs that they felt may need some help. So we had to come in and find out what help they might need and hopefully provide some of it.
And what have you found?
Well, maybe we'll get Richard to tell us. I started with Richard about November of last year, so 10, 11 months ago. Richard, I think, had recently been appointed as president for the first time.
Yes.
With a very new committee and was facing some challenges, which I might get Richard to take his mind back and see if he can remember how it was.
Well, when you look back now, it was a bit of a nightmare we sort of walked into. But it got down to the nitty-gritty where our previous chairman, who did a marvellous job just to keep the doors open, he had recently retired and he wanted to do a lot of travelling, so he didn't have the time to do the job. So at the AGM, I just went along as an ordinary member. I'd only been involved with the club sort of playing bowls down here for 12 months or so. But it got to the point where no one wanted to nominate for the chairman's job, and it got very serious that if someone didn't nominate, they were having to close the doors. So I didn't want that to happen. So with the encouragement of the members, I stepped into the breach, and the rest is history sort of thing. I had a new treasurer. Michael, our secretary, he'd only been in the job for a couple of years, and we had some inexperienced people on the board. So it all evolved from there.
Sorry, Chris, is this your first president role, Richard?
No, I've been in sports administration all my life, mainly rugby league and hockey. But I injured my back when I was playing rugby league. So I got into the administration when I was about 27.
Okay.
And but I did walk away from all sports administration in 2000. I'd had enough, burnt out, and said I will never ever do it again. And here we are now.
Can I ask a probing question just on that? What was it that burnt you out?
Just dealing with the everyday rigours of the clubs, always chasing financials, dealing with off-field incidents, and it just sort of it gets to the stage where you think, I don't need this in my life anymore. So I just sort of packed up and walked away from the whole situation.
Was either sport worse?
Yes, rugby league by far. And, let me tell you that the problems that they have in the big league, in the NRL and that sort of thing, it's the same problems that's happening in country rugby league. It doesn't matter whether you're a low grade club or a top affiliated club, the problems are all the same. And, I take my hat off to every administrator who's in every form of capacity to deal with these things, because mentally it never leaves you, because it's you're putting out so many bushfires.
Then the transition to being a bowls player, that was physical. Obviously, you can't play rugby league once you've got a bad back. Did you notice better on field and sideline behaviour on the bowling green than you did on the rugby league?
Bowling clubs, in some clubs, the politics are still there. There's no doubt about that. But it's you don't get the behaviour of the people, because mainly they're an older age and they're more mature. Mind you, alcohol, can loosen a few lips, sort of thing. But on the main, it's more reserved, so to speak.
So going back 12 months, then when you took over, would it be fair to say the club was at the time a typical bowls club? It was ageing demographic. I know the treasurer had been on the board for 17 years. Was that the kind of environment you ran into?
Well, I did. And the thing that attracted me to the club in the first place was we were looking for somewhere to have our son's, he got married overseas, and we wanted to have a reception here in Australia for him as well. And we were looking around, and we just, as I said, stumbled across this club while we were driving around. And it was just an ideal setting. And when we sort of went to deal with the people, the whole club is based on volunteers. They did not have one employed person, or except the greenkeeper. Everyone, who worked behind the bar or worked in the kitchen or did anything was all volunteers. And they were so friendly. That's what attracted me to the place. And I was sort of looking down the track to retire, so I was looking for something to do. Yep. And so my wife said, well, why don't you just join the bowling club? And away we went from there. So I enjoyed 12 months of freedom playing.
Seems like a long time ago now.
It does.
So let's remember a bit going back 12 months. So as I recall, and you can elaborate on this for me, we had no real financial information. We had inconsistent higher fees for the facility for different organisations who might want to use it. We had a lot of people serving behind the bar, because if a volunteer served behind the bar, they got a free beer. Mm-hmm. So the story around town was that if you go into Dwellers Hill, you'd see 10 people behind the bar serving nobody. But they're all having a free beer. You had you still have a fantastic commercial kitchen that wasn't operating. Mm-hmm. What else?
Well, when the night of that I got elected, I went home and I had a look at the financials, and they'd lost money for the previous 5 years or so. And I sat down and I told my wife, that what had happened, and she said, I just knew that was going to happen. And, but I thought, so what do? Do I just sit around and let it wither on the vine, or do I get stuck in with the committee and we try and resurrect the place? And I'll never forget the meeting was the Monday night. On the Friday night, the first Friday night that I was chairman, I came down and there was people. So, because the club was organised as barbecues of a Friday night, and you were getting a few people in. And I said to these two ladies, what can I do to attract more people to this club? And she said, the first thing to do is put some music on. So I thought, well, that's easy. So I put some CDs on and we had music. And then she said, join the Tarragindi Community Facebook page. And I said, what's that? Because I'm not tech savvy. And she said, have you got a phone? And I said, yes. She said, give it to me. And then she put me on this Tarragindi Facebook page. And she said, just tell people what's going on. And you wouldn't believe, virtually overnight, I was telling people, what was going to happen down here. And people were saying, I've lived around here for 40 years and I didn't even know this club was there. Yeah. So the majority of the suburb didn't even know this club was here. So,
we had no signage. We had no signage at the front, and council wouldn't let you put signage.
No signage whatsoever. The only thing we had was a sign on one of the main roads that said Bowls Club. It didn't even say what name it was, and it was it was a kilometre away. So that was the only form of any information that Bowls Club was here.
So you set about talking to your patrons. Great start. And I remember coming to meet with you and your treasurer and secretary when I was just trying to get my head around what was going on. And you had this enthusiasm and this abundance of ideas and projects that were heading off in a million different directions. So much so that I went home and I thought, I'm going to write down everything that the Wellers Hill Bowls Club is undertaking at the moment. And there were 43 actions that I came up with from my memory from that one meeting. So how did you take those challenges on and how did you kind of work your way through them, prioritise them?
Well, the best thing you did was send us that email with those 43 because we sort of had to prioritise. Our treasurer is just so full of enthusiasm. It's incredible how much energy and goodwill that he wants to do for the club. Because he's only a young bloke and he's a real tech-savvy sort of guy and which is totally different world to me. So our executive is funny, like they call me the diplomat, and our secretary is a very reserved sort of level-headed guy.
Yeah.
And our treasurer is a gung-ho, let's go get him, and I've just got to keep pulling on his coattail and say, just hang on a minute, Ben, just hang on. We don't have to do it tomorrow, sort of thing.
So we had 43 actions. The treasurer was probably undertaking a fair few of those.
He was probably undertaking 35 of them.
But we couldn't get any financial reports for the meetings.
No, that's right. Yeah, we didn't know how much money we had, sort of thing.
Or didn't have.
Well, we didn't have. Yeah, that's right. So that was the first thing that we had to do was rein in whatever spending was going to be done and then work out what our priorities were, but also work out how the hell we're going to get people through the front door.
Yeah. And tell us more about that, because obviously now the club is getting people through the front door. And, I just walked in now to meet Richard prior to the podcast and the phone was ringing for another booking for meals tonight. Yeah. So how did you do that?
Well, it was probably a few weeks after I became chairman. I was behind the bar one Friday night and I was serving, and this lady said to me, and I didn't know her from a bar of soap, and she said, this would be a great place to have a community garden. And I said, a community garden? What's that? And so she explained a little bit to me, and I said, look, she gave me a phone number, and she said, look, if you're interested, ring me. And I said, righto. She said, I've put a few in around Brisbane. So I went home and I was thinking about it, and I thought, well, no one knows where we are. What a great idea to have a community garden here where people will come to the club and then they will know where it is and they can tell other people. So I rang this lady and we got together and the enthusiasm, and her name is Renee, she's an incredible woman. The enthusiasm that she has for the community is unbounded. We decided that we'd hold a public interest meeting at the club one on a Sunday afternoon. So we just put it on this Facebook, and over 50 people turned up. And out of that 50 people, I was explained to them that if the community didn't support the club, well, the club wouldn't survive. So out of that 50, I'd say 40-odd joined as social members that day.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, how good is this? So then we took it a little step further and we approached council about having to put a garden in, get permission because they're our landlords. And lo and behold, the deputy mayor came to us and she said, look, we'll give you $1,000. Okay. So they give us $1,000 for $5,500 to start with. And then before the end of the financial year, they had a bit of money left in the pot. So they give us another $2,000. And I thought, wow, you know. So that's how it all started. And it has brought so many people to this club now.
Yes.
And it's known Brisbane-wide about this community garden at Wellers Hill. So,
yep. Drove up this morning and there was a young family in the garden walking around, mum with toddlers and pushchair having a look and explaining what was in it.
I spoke to a lady last week. She was out in the garden, came down to the club, and she said that she was from Ashgrove and she'd heard about this community garden. So she drove from Ashgrove down here just to have a look at it.
Great.
Wow. You know, that's the type of positivity that we look for.
So you've got a community garden and a bowls club. Now, we like to talk about diversification and building different revenue streams. That's quite different. Are you seeing any people from one participating in the other?
Well, yeah, let me tell you, first of all, when I embraced the idea about this community garden with the bowling club members, I did get a fair bit of blowback. And I mean a fair bit of blowback. And that's where it took the diplomatic skills to sort of put the bushfire out. And but now there's nothing but gratitude and support from all the bowling club members. They love it. And, you know, even the staunchest critics now admit that it was a great idea.
And the people from the garden now come and have a meal on a Friday night and a beer and patronise the club.
That's right.
Yeah.
So they're joining in. And what I did find when we first started with the idea, we would get one group on one Friday night, but then we'd get a totally different group the following Friday night. Okay. So, we were getting a lot of turnover of new faces, which is good.
Something you mentioned in support of the community garden, which I think is also important for other people to understand, is you said they got support from the local councillor and from the mayor, I think you said, or deputy mayor. We talked early on about the need to engage with your elected representatives to get them on side, and you went along and did exactly what we suggested with absolute vigour and great success.
Well, it was through your encouragement, because the first question you asked me when we did speak the first time is, have you been to the local councillor, have you been to your local state member, or have you been to your federal member? And I said no, no, and no. So the next week, I jumped on my bike and away I went, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And had a meeting with our local councillor, who happened to be the deputy mayor, who's been really supportive. And then I spoke with our state member, and I mentioned the cash injection from them. So he sort of personally give us some money towards it, which is great.
Yep.
And then I went and met the federal member and give him the same spool. And at the moment, we're still waiting for a bit of money, but I'm sure we'll get it one day.
Of course.
Yeah, but it was really good. And the good part about it was, in years gone by, the bowling club and the soccer club, which is right beside us here, they had a joint venture in the club. And then back in 2008 or something, they had a massive break up, and that's where the club nearly went down the hill. And but every one of them who I went and saw, all the political people, said, how's your relationship now with the soccer club? And they have a new president, and the first thing I virtually did was buy him a beer, invite him over, and we sat down and said, well, you know, what's gone in the past is in the past, and we don't care what's happened in the past. All we're worried about is the future. And we have a great relationship now because we share a car park. every week he sends me a list of what all their games are, and if we have any special functions on, I send him an email to let him know what's happening with us. So we have a great relationship now.
And last time you and I met, you remember you telling me that the captain, I think, had come over after training and brought all the lads over for a beer after training one night. So that's now starting to pay back as well.
That's right, yeah, which is good. And even some of the mothers now, because we weren't open every night of the week to start with. They were only open about 3.5 days a week. And I wanted to sort of open every night. So now when the mothers bring their kids to training and that, they slip over here unbeknownst to the kids and have a quick wine and away they go again. So.
Only one wine.
Yeah,
only one wine. These are responsible soccer mums. So is this something that you're looking at building as well, Richard?
In the relationship?
Definitely the relationship with the football club.
Yeah, for sure. Like we as I said, we have a great relationship with them now. And, like for example, they were doing some, they were getting rid of some of their old buildings that they had, and they had a ride-on mower and all that they needed to put in undercover. So they come and asked if we could put it in our big shed, and so we accommodated them for as long as it took, and that sort of thing that we're doing. Yeah. Even on some of our like we have food truck days and that. They come over now and sort of have a drink and sort of have a meal and that sort of thing.
I was going to ask you about the food truck days. Can you just tell us a little bit more about that? Because they're a raging success, aren't they?
Well, they are. And this is all through our treasurer. He was the one driving the food trucks. And so we decided...
Not literally.
Yeah. we decided, because COVID, when you look at it, COVID was good to us because... when everyone had to shut down and we had to shut down, you could still have a bit of exercise. So the guys would come and have a roll of bowls and go home, which kept everyone in contact with each other.
Yeah.
But then when the laws got a bit relaxed, where you could have 10 people and then you could have 20 people in the club, because we were volunteers, we didn't have to pay any wages or anything like that. So the big clubs couldn't open up because it was too expensive. So everyone in the community realised when we were all locked down that the community is really important to them. So they started coming down here. Yeah. And then it just grew as the laws got relaxed and the more numbers that you're allowed to have, the more numbers we got. Yeah. And still the big clubs couldn't open up because it wasn't viable for them. So we established some rapport with all our local people, and in the meantime, we're starting to get a bit of revenue sort of coming in. So it really worked for us.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and then we got approached by a person involved in these food trucks, and he said he'd like to bring about 4 down down here one Sunday. So we said, yeah, why not? And so they came down, but on Facebook again, we just hammered the hell out of telling everyone what was on. And the reaction on that Sunday, I'll never forget it. I just could not believe the amount of people that came to this club. And on that day, we took more money over the bar on that particular day than we would have got in 3 weeks of trading.
Yep.
It was just amazing.
Yep.
So now food trucks are, we do one probably once a month.
Yep.
With 4 or 5 trucks. But every weekend now, on a Saturday afternoon, we have a food truck, and on a Sunday afternoon, we have a food truck.
Yep.
Is that still leading to good bar trade as well, Richard?
Oh, certainly is. Certainly. Like before, on a Sunday, you'd be lucky to sort of have 4 or 5 people come to the club. Now, the bottom bowling green is absolutely jam-packed with barefoot bowlers, people sitting on on their blankets on the grass, drinking and laughing and carrying on, which has in turn helped us get some new members. Our social members, when we took over, I think was in the vicinity of a bit over 300. And now we have over 1,000 social members. So, and now we're putting on live entertainment on a Sunday afternoon as well.
Yeah.
And, so that's helping. And Saturdays are growing as well. 3 o'clock on an afternoon on a Saturday down here now, the bottom bowling green is full again with barefoot bowlers.
Yep.
People sort of wandering around that. And we let everyone know that we're pet friendly. So people of an afternoon go out walking their dogs, stop and have a couple of beers. And we even went out and bought, nice new dog bowls to put the water in and poo bags for the dogs and all this sort of thing. So people just love it.
Yes. You were just telling me, sorry, before we started, Richard, that somebody had spoken to you about other bowls clubs knowing about you.
Yes, well, we haven't, would you believe, we've come into the 21st century, but we buy our goods from wholesalers now for the kitchen, instead of just going down to the supermarket and buying it. And he was telling me that he said his area goes way up north and down south, and he said the bowling clubs that he goes to, he said everyone wants to know what's going on at this Wellers Hills Bowling Club. We're hearing about this Wellers Hills Bowling Club. And that then brings me into what really, we had all these things going, but we only had 5 beers on tap.
Yep.
And we had a mid-range beer and a Carlton beer, and we had 2 from our local brewery, which is the boutique brewery, craft beer. And they, ever since Ballistic Brewery sort of started, the club put their beer on tap, which is good for the locals.
Yes.
But no one knew about it. And so our treasurer, he's just a gung-ho on this craft beer, and he said, let's get stuck into it. And I said, righto, let's give it a whack. And so we took the ordinary beer off tap, and we put a couple more on and advertised it, and people come down. And so then we decided it was going well. So we put another 6 taps on
of craft beer.
Yeah. So now we have 11 taps of craft beer on, and we have 44 different can varieties of beer. And wow. I tell you, I cannot believe the amount of people that it has brought to this club. Yeah. And I mean the craft beer. And then Ben found this website where these craft beer people go on and look, who's selling what sort of thing. And so he advertised on that. And the amount of response that we got of people coming in and saying, oh, I saw you on this website, or I saw what you have on that website. And I've gone, are you people for real? Do you do this?
I've sat in here now and seen people coming in the club with their craft beer T-shirts on, because that's what the weekend. They go and find venues that drink craft beer.
Exactly. And so on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday now, it's just the amount of takings and I'll give you a good example. 3 weeks ago, we had another big. On the Father's Day it was.
Okay.
So yep. Father's Day we had food trucks and we had a bit of live band. On the Monday morning, I emptied out of the back dock 13 50-litre beer kegs and 6 20-litre beer kegs that we'd sold on a Friday, Saturday.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
wow.
That gives us an idea.
Which is great in one way, but it actually segues into my next thing I wanted to talk to you about briefly, which is, why were you emptying the kegs out, Mr. President? So I know that one of the things that you've done over the year, we've talked about this often, is you've firstly got your finance into a much better position because of all the good things that we've talked about. And now you're, in my opinion, very wisely starting to spend some of that money on staff. So you do have some bar staff. Yes. You do have, I think, a bar manager. You've certainly got a bookkeeper in place now, which you're paying. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, well, it did. It all sort of, how would you say, come to a head. It was coming up to one Saturday, and we had a lot of functions on. And I thought, I've run out of volunteers, because at this stage, everyone was still a volunteer. And I thought, hell, what am I going to do? I've got no one to, we can't hold them, sort of thing. So anyway, on the Tuesday, again, I went to Facebook and I just put a note on Facebook and said, Wellers Hill is bowling club is looking for some bar staff and just apply. And immediately I got a hell of a lot of response.
Yes.
And at that stage we had one young lady who was working on a Friday night for us, and she was a really good lady and only young. Anyway, so I said to her, these people who have applied are around your age, so how about sitting in on the interviews with us? So we interviewed 5 people the first night and hired every one of them. And then the next day we interviewed another 3 and we hired them as well.
Right.
So we got through the weekend, and they worked immediately that weekend.
Yep.
And it was just incredible. Though I felt so sorry for them because we were so busy, and they had no idea, What? Yeah, and not make matters worse, but it was all craft beer, just. No, everyone's saying, well, what's this like? Or what's that like? Or have you got a sour beer? I'm thinking, sour beer? What the hell are you talking about? Anyway, so to answer your question, I said, I'm out of here. So I'm in the background now doing the labour.
Good luck.
And
okay.
Yeah. So and then I thought, well, we need someone to coordinate all this. So the young lady who was first employed by us, I approached her and sort of said she's doing a double degree in all this sort of stuff.
Hospitality.
Yeah,
that's right. Remember you telling me?
And I said to her, so how about, would you be interested in a permanent part-time position, so many hours a week? You look after all the staff rostering and look after all the function bookings and all that sort of thing, because we had bookings coming in everywhere and people were just putting it in a journal and some had contact numbers, some didn't have contact numbers.
Remember your booking system?
Oh, yeah. So now Laura is her name, and now she does that.
Great.
And it was only this week I've said to her, we might have to look at extending your hours if you can, if you can fit it in.
Yeah.
But the good part about it is what your recommendation was to us was the bookkeeping.
Yeah.
The bookkeeper. And now, Laura just sends off all the hours for the bookkeeper. She does all the wages. She does all the superannuation. Everything that's got to be done with the staff.
And the last meeting I attended, you actually had a financial report.
We did have a financial
report, which I think showed a significant profit for the month.
We did. We made $9,132 for the month.
Very good.
Well done.
So, but the other thing that we have done is we have bought a lot of things for the club, and we had 6 outdoor settings built, and people just amazed, and we put it all out on the grass and all this sort of thing, and people just flocked to it. And it got that popular where people were ringing up booking
space on the grass.
Well, booking space, booking the seats. But it got to the stage where we couldn't sort of police it, so we just had to say, first down, first best dressed sort of thing.
Yeah.
But that's how popular they became. And we had people wanting to book functions out there. And so now, and we turned our barren area into a beer garden.
Yep.
And we've got barbecues set up in there for them, and now we have a balcony that we have seating on. So we've got about 5 different areas where we can have have functions now, which is great.
And this morning you told me you'd spent some money on a sound system to supplement the live music, so that's going to be better.
We have, we got that was only installed yesterday actually, and so now if a guy has a guitar and he wants to sing, he can come in, plug in, and away he goes.
Well, Michael's in a band, so you might get an offer from him. So,
there you go. Look, I love it when my worlds collide.
Yeah.
So, okay, I was going to ask you what lessons you've learned, but given your experience in many years of sports administration, I don't know that's the right question. What lessons do you think your experience might have for other clubs, particularly other bowls clubs that are facing the same transition from bowls to a more social environment? What do you think you might be able to share with those guys?
Get your priorities right.
Okay.
Make a list of what you want to do.
43 things.
But try and not do the 43 things at the one time.
Yeah.
It's virtually take dolly steps, but it's amazing once you get the community behind you. And believe me, that's the best advice I could get is get involved with your community.
Yeah.
If you get involved with the community, you're halfway home.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Through whatever mechanism possible, whether it's talking to your members of parliament, whether it's using social media, whether it's putting food trucks on, putting a community garden in, talking to the football club next door.
All of the above.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it is. And make everyone feel that they're welcome.
Yes.
And that's the biggest thing. Like, I go around talking to everyone. I've got no idea who they are.
Nope.
But thank them for coming to the club, because it costs you nothing to say thank you.
I know.
But it's a big thing to someone who doesn't even know who you are.
Yes.
And think, well, this bloke's friendly club. And that was the thing that attracted me to this club, was the friendliness of the people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one last question for me. What's next? What next step? You got your AGM next week?
We got our
So you're sticking your hand up again?
We got our AGM on Monday night. And so, yes, after the encouragement from my wife, I'm going again. And
great.
And I must thank the members, because I've had nothing but encouragement and feedback from them who have said they cannot believe the turnaround in this club, what we have done in the 12 months.
Yes.
But again, I must give most of the credit to my secretary and treasurer. They have been amazing, those two blokes.
You're a good team.
And I really, really, mean that from the bottom of my heart.
Yeah.
But what's next? Let's consolidate.
Yep.
I
don't believe you use that word.
If I can rein Benny in, let's consolidate. But I think our next big project will be our kitchen, to rebuild the kitchen, and because we are getting so many inquiries about functions, and we want to attract more bowlers.
Yep.
The other good thing about it is, where in previous the board have been responsible for the bowling club sides of things. Now I've encouraged them, and it's happening in 2 weeks' time. We are going to have a bowling club committee with their own president and secretary, and then they'll have a committee. So they will be responsible for everything to do with bowls in the club, and that'll free up our board to concentrate on the mother club, everything involved with the club. And because we just haven't had the time to help with the bowls, and then that will in turn make us stronger in the bowling club section, sort of thing.
Yes.
Which is only good for Wellers Hill.
Of course.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So that's our story.
Good on you. Long may it rain, Richard, and well done.
Thanks
been real fun
Chris.
working with you.
And I hope our relationship continues.
Me too. It's good.
Yep.
It has been absolutely fantastic hearing your story, Richard. There is so much in what you've just said that I wish every single club in this country, indeed every single community club anywhere on the freaking planet, knew. The biggest thing to start is you saw a problem. You saw that the club was small. Now, I love having a look at bowls clubs from the air, so just go and have a look at a satellite image of bowls clubs, and you are just like all of the other bowls clubs. And Chris particularly has had the, I won't say privilege, but the experience of working with a lot of other bowls clubs recently that cannot hold a candle to anything that you've just told us. You're in exactly the same sort of residential position as a lot of other clubs. And sure, people may get lost between the sign that says Bowls Club and where they can actually wiggle down to where the Bowls Club is. But you've done an amazing turnaround in a way that any club could do. You've said that trade is up, and that's food sales are up, bar sales are up. You've got so many more people at the club, but really importantly, you've also got people on the green, remembering that most bowls clubs, while the trade now becomes far more important, it's still a bowling club, and there's still an obligation on you to provide physical activity on a sport and recreation chunk of land for council. So you're doing that. You're taking the wins in one area, like the introduction of craft beer and the introduction of the community garden, and then you're making sure that you're making sure that everybody knows about everything about the club. So you've done some things that are really simple steps that I wish that everybody knew. I wish that everybody knew that it takes, firstly, vision, and you did that, and you had the scattergun approach. And let's imagine that the 43 ideas that Chris remembered and then wrote down and sent in that big scary email, let's imagine that was deliberate. You've done that as a brainstorming exercise. Then you've narrowed those down to the ones that you think are going to have the greatest effect. And the most important, and then you've decided, you've made the decision to do something. And then most importantly, you've done something. You've taken the massive action necessary to do things. That massive action in a community club doesn't need to be difficult. And you've proven that. You've proven that people who come from various backgrounds with various levels of experience and often with no particular skills to do what you've done. I'm pretty sure that you had no experience with dealing with craft beers in the past, but you've done it. You've taken a leap, you've had a crack, and you've taken the action necessary.
A positive mindset is fundamental to all of that. Richard, I wasn't going to mention COVID because it hasn't been a part of the story. It certainly hasn't been a negative part of the Wellers Hill story, but Richard mentioned it in a positive way. I mean, his attitude and the attitude of the other members of the committee in terms of we can do this, this is great, this is an opportunity, not a problem, is absolutely fundamental to the transition that he has led. And it's credit to you that that's the case, Richard.
Absolutely. So, Richard, many years ago, I was naive. I was young and naive. Now I'm older and less naive. And I used to think that I could solve every problem in a club in a year. Now I've realised that I can't even identify every problem in a club in a year. But if I can finish on the most inspiring thing that, and this may have been lost on you as you mentioned it, the most inspiring thing to come out of this interview for me was when you said, "I'm standing again with the encouragement from my wife." So you are at a point, it feels to me as an outsider, you are at a point where whether consciously or subconsciously, you have a picture in your mind of the perfect volunteer life for Richard Tanner. And you are getting closer to that utopia than many people that we work with. And that is just inspiring for me as a husband, and it's inspiring for me as a volunteer and as a teacher of volunteers, that you are evidence that the Holy Grail does exist and you can drink from it.
Living the dream.
Yeah. I am.
Great.
I'm a lucky man, Michael.
And they're lucky to have you. They're lucky to have you.
Look, the feedback for Chris from me is just total positivity. He has identified things that we needed and we wouldn't have even thought about it. But every recommendation virtually that Chris has recommended to us, we have taken it and run. And I've just got so much admiration for him, that he's helped us along this way, that I'll be forever grateful. And I hope that our relationship continues on well into the future. It's been very helpful for us.
Good. Yep. It's been a lot of fun, you know that. A lot of fun. A lot of fun.
I love. He told me a story once that he has to report to the hierarchy of the council every now and again, and he said, and because we're a W, we're at the bottom end of the scale, going through all the reports about the clubs.
Yeah.
And he said, when I get to Wellers Hill, he said, I break out in a big smile. He said, and they asked me why. And he said, because I'm talking about Wellers Hill. I was just so chuffed about that. I thought, how good is that? You know?
It's true.
And it is. It's
all these
just
problem clubs.
Yeah.
And then I come to you and it's light and happiness. It's great. Yeah.
I must say, nothing could have been achieved without the help of all the volunteers of this club. Yeah. They are the backbone of this club. There's no egos. That's the good part. There's no egos in this club, because if you did have an ego, you wouldn't be lasting long.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of blokes in this club who kept this club going when all was doom and gloom and the doors should have been locked. These couple of blokes by the name of Dave and Ray. Yeah. I won't embarrass them by their last names, but
they know who they are.
But they are the two people who virtually kept this club alive. And to them, I thank them very much. Give us the opportunity to take a step forward.
Absolutely inspiring. Richard, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure when we get to show people a ladder, but all we can do is show you the ladder, and to see you guys climb it with such vigour and enthusiasm and get in and take that massive action. Congratulations and well done.
Thanks very much, Michael. Thank you.
Fantastic.